Well, Brinsley McNamara here. So for today's episode, myself and Shameen have picked two different topics. He doesn't know what I'm going to say, and he doesn't know what I don't know what he's going to say. So so we're going to see how this works out. My bit first. Well, my name is Brinsley McNamara, and welcome to the Weird Ireland podcast. Cryptids. Have you ever seen one? Well, that's okay, because not many have. A cryptid is the word used to describe creatures that are seemingly seen by some folk, but are unproven to exist. Here's a few popular examples. The Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Mothman, the Jersey Devil, those big-eyed grey aliens from outer space, maybe even ghosts and banshees, but I don't know if supernatural beings count as cryptids exactly. I skipped cryptozoology in university. Now, from the examples I've given, you might think that cryptids are a sensation you'd hear about mostly in North America, or Scotland in the case of the Loch Ness Monster. However, here in Ireland we have a fair few of our own homegrown fantastic creatures. The waterborne type get called a lot of things here. Horse eels, horsefish, horned eels, olliefishes, or in one instance in 1960, the Lough Monster. So here with me now to learn all about these wily cryptids is Shameen O'Burke. How are you doing today, Shameen?
I'm good, Brinsley. How are you?
Good. Always good to see you. So, I don't know what your topic is, but now you've heard mine is the Lough Monster. How much did you already know about that?
Nothing.
No. Okay, I'm gonna. By the way, I'm actually gonna preamble this bit about the Lough Monster by saying the very first podcast me and you tried to do, the very first Weird Ireland podcast we tried to do in general, back in July of 2024. Was about cryptids in general.
Yeah.
It didn't work out because it was too broad a topic to do. You know, you could do a podcast on each one of them, let alone all of them. We were also just very new to it, and it was just, I didn't really want to podcast.
It didn't work out well.
It was the middle of the summer, and we got very excited because we were starting podcasting, and we started drinking, and then we just got way less focus as it went on.
Yeah, I remember that.
That still exists. So I might put together an episode sometime where it's just all those other ones that didn't. There's other podcasts, especially early ones, but recent ones too, that didn't work out for one reason or another. So I might just do a super cut of them sometime and release them for the hell of it,
like a blooper reel.
Like a blooper reel. Yeah. No, I've never heard of a podcast blooper reel yet. But this time we're just talking about lake and sea monsters of Ireland, which might sound like they're all very different things, but they're all pretty related in a lot of ways. So let me tell you about the Lough Monster. You know Lough in general, yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, Lough is a lake that's split between counties Westmeath, Roscommon and Longford. It's on the banks of all of these. It's a very big lake, as lakes in Ireland go. On Wednesday, the 18th of May, 1960, three priests, supposedly named Father Murray, Father Quigley and Father Burke, but I'm not 100% sure on those names. I've just read those in some places. So don't quote me as gospel on that. Anyways, the three guys, they were out fishing on a boat at about 9:30 in the evening on the 18th of May. They were mayfly fishing, and although the three of them were from Dublin, they'd been fishing on Lough for a long time, so they were very, very used to the lake. They were offshore from St. Mark's Wood, it's near Glassown in County Westmeath, and seemingly they reported the water was calm, and there was low wind. They saw a creature come out of the lake about 80 or 100 yards away from them. They said they saw it for about a minute, until it submerged again. One of them actually had enough time to sketch the creature. I'll show you the sketch in a minute. It's a pretty basic one, but I'll show you the sketch of what they did. They described it that it looked like a conger eel. However, conger eels are supposedly very rare in freshwater lakes. They said it had a flat head like a python, and they reported that about 2 feet behind the head, it looked like the creature had a hump. And they're reported to be about 7-8 feet long, something like that. So this would be a very unnaturally big thing.
Yeah.
They only saw it for about a minute. When they got back to the shore, the three of them reported what they saw. This led to a sensation around Athlone, where fishermen from all over the country were going there trying to find the monster. There was actually a pub around Athlone that put it up a wanted dead or alive post, bounty for the monster. There was £100 reward for catching the Lough Monster. There's a lot of accounts of this because the local newspaper at the time, the Westmeath Independent, still the newspaper now, the Westmeath Independent of Athlone, and other newspapers documented this, so you can get a lot of this information, contemporary information, readily online. But apparently it was not broadcast, it was reported in newspapers from outside of Ireland as well, and went to the UK. And even apparently some hoteliers in Athlone were saying it was one of the best things that happened in Athlone in years because it brought so much business and such attraction to the town. So they were delighted with it.
Sounds to me like it was just a big pike.
Okay, so you actually have a bit of experience. How much fishing? I've never fished. How much fishing experience do you have?
I haven't gone since I was about 15.
Yeah.
With my dad years ago. so not much, but I know how big pike can get.
Yeah.
If you're ever in the Kelvin Grove Museum in Glasgow, they have big pike's head in the natural history section, and it's absolutely huge. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a big pike, is what they're saying.
Yeah. That's one of. We'll get to the theories of what people thought it was.
Okay.
But just naturally, you've been around fishing. You've been around people that fish. You know, like that's your first instinct. It's a pike.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
They get fierce big, like.
Oh no, I've seen. I saw a pike when I was one out of the water. When I was a very little child. I feel like my dad or my uncles or something caught one. It was a huge yoke. You're not supposed to. Now this would have been the 90s, but you're not like when I saw a pike. You're not supposed to take them out of the waterways anymore, I don't think.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about because they're slightly, they can be invasive in some waterways because they eat everything.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, to be honest.
I've heard some people say people don't eat them because they're just full of bones. They're just they're just bones. They just barely eat it. I could be wrong. There could be some pike eaters out there. Now, as it turns out, this 1960 account was not the only account of a monster in Lough, a sea monster, a lake monster in Lough. Going all the way back to the 6th century, there was a Saint Mochua, I'm going to hope it's pronounced Mochua, but I've gotten saints' names wrong before, from County Mayo. In the life of Saint Mochua, there was reported a sighting of a monster in Lough. Seemingly there was a deer being chased by hounds on one of the islands of Lough, and instead of the deer refused to go into the water because of supposedly a monster that could eat something the size of a deer would live in there. Now in that account they call it a paist, and we've established you're better at Irish than I am. What does that mean to you?
Paist is ghost, isn't it?
Is ghost?
Taibsha. Taibsha is ghost. Paist is like, it's a worm.
Pole paste, like pole paste.
Yeah, it's a worm. Yeah.
It's a worm. Seemingly can be used to mean a serpent or something like that as well. Or in the Irish context, it can mean a dragon, because there isn't Irish dragons in the same sense, the ones with wings and that kind of thing. Yeah. So they refer to it as a paist, either as a dragon or as a serpent.
But it's a Loch Ness monster, Lough Monster, they're classed under like muckies or silkies or something like that.
Selkie. A selkie. That's kind of like Selkie.
I don't know, I can't remember, but like there's something like that.
A selkie is like I think that is some kind of a mythological thing in Ireland, but that's a Scottish thing as well, I believe. It's also a sea thing.
Kelpies is the Scottish thing.
Oh, Kelpies. The first thing you said, muckies, is actually something I'm going to go into in a bit. Do you know Lake Muckross in County Kerry? It's outside Killarney.
No.
Lake Muckross in, I think it was 2001. I'll get to that. There was another lake creature sighting in Loch Muckross, or Muckross Lake, and they called it Mucky because is it Mucky? Lake Muckross. So this comes up quite a lot, these kinds of things. In the Westmeath Independent as well, in 1952, they reported a folktale where St. Patrick seemingly banished the snakes from Ireland, and where he banished them into was Lough. However, they were allowed to reappear out of there every 7 years. There was another 1960 account of inhabitants on Lough. So there's quite a few islands on Lough. Nobody lives on them now, as far as I'm aware, but I really doubt it, to be honest. But not that long ago, in the 20th century, people did live on them. I actually went to one in 2015. My uncle has a boat and he brought us out to one of it. It's so cool. We'll try to go sometime. It's a pretty big island, but there's a house. There's an abandoned house on it. And in the abandoned house, there was old jackets hung up. There was kind of like an altar, like a lot of houses back then would have had like a corner place where they put the religious iconography. That was all still there. There was photographs of people that lived there and everything. There was so much stuff there.
I like seeing abandoned houses when it's like it's as if they left it in the state that they,
as they just closed the door, left, and we're going to come back, and they didn't.
It's cool seeing that.
It's cool seeing that. We'll try to go there sometime. Now, it was 10 years ago I was there. Who knows what it looks like now? And the funniest thing I remember, it's the only time I've ever seen this. Because they lived on an island, they had their gripe just behind their house, and the island's not that big, so it's all of their rubbish, like bottles and that kind of thing, are just in a heap behind. In a heap behind the house, or broken plates, that kind of thing, all just back there, and still there because they don't decay. Now, back in 1960, February of that year, seemingly other islanders on the lake recorded a similar encounter. It was about 6 feet long, the strength of a horse, and they couldn't pull it in. When they actually managed to pull in their net, because it was the strength of a horse, seemingly, it was broken. They found a 9-foot long hole in it, no monster, and they were annoyed because seemingly this net was only like 2 weeks old. Apparently, they didn't tell anyone at the time because they thought they'd just be jeered out of it,
Jeered out of
Yeah,
it.
jeered out of it. As they did back then, as they still do now, I suppose. So there's been quite a few accounts like that around Lough prior to. Since then, there's not been any very big publicly known ones. However, there genuinely is some researchers who have written books on lake monsters in Ireland. One guy called Peter Costello in 1974 wrote a book called In Search of Lake Monsters. And in his account, he talks about in the 70s when he was going to Lough and asking people about the Lough monster. He would ask local farmers, have you ever seen the Lough monster?
Yeah.
And they would say no, because they was just not really that sure what he was talking about.
Yeah.
However, the more he would talk to them, he would realise that they didn't call it that. Eventually, they would start talking about something called a horsefish, and or a horse eel, or a horsefish. You can use both. And then if you rephrase the question, have you ever seen any horse eels or horsefish? They were like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen them, yeah. They would even have stories about, they would find their cattle on the shores of Lough that were dead with marks on it as if blood had been drained from the cow. And they believed that horse eels or horsefish did this.
Yeah.
I don't think he had enough time to pursue that avenue. I think he was about to leave the area after that. But he was like, damn, I was asking the wrong question the whole time. It was a different word that most people actually used around there.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, there actually was a Lough Monster Festival in Lanesborough, at the top of the lake for a few years. I don't know what they did. They haven't done that in 10 or 20 years, I'd say. But they did used to celebrate it up there quite a bit. Now, let's get to the explanations. The three priests had to go to the Inland Fisheries Board, and they had to give their genuine account of what happened.
Yeah.
That's where you get a lot of the information from the newspapers, the time of it, the date of it, how big it was, how they accounted it.
Yeah.
The people they were talking to didn't believe that the three priests were, prone to just imagining things. And especially at the time in 1960, priests were sort of seen as being a very reputable source, and there was three of them.
Yeah.
So although the priests did not think that it was something supernatural, they just thought it was some kind of a fish that was unidentified and nobody knew about.
Yeah.
They didn't believe it was a pike. They were very familiar with the lake and they were sure it wasn't a pike.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other things that people could have thought it was except for a pike?
Dead animals surfacing on the water. I don't know. What else?
Similar, one big one claimed that it was one Westmeath County councillor at the time, who was also an angler, or fisherman, I guess, said that it was probably a pike caught in a pike line. And it was wiggling around to try and escape the pike line.
Wasn't too wrong.
No, it wasn't too wrong. That's just, and they're around there a lot. Another one claimed that it could have been a really big piece of wood that was floating in the lake and come to the surface every now and then. One guy in the Inland Fishery Board, a very interesting hypothesis, claimed that he believed it could have been a family of otters swimming. Because according to him, when a family of otters swim,
they hold on to each other.
Yeah, they swim in a line, and they'll crest up and down for the wave, so it could look like a longer thing. They all had very normal explanations for what this was, and they all live around the lake, and they're literally the Inland Fisheries Board. Now, some of the more sensationalist ideas was that it could have been I didn't look up how to pronounce this prior. Coelacanth. A coelacanth was Coelacanth. It's not Irish. It's Latin, I presume.
Is that like those fish that haven't evolved in in thousands, millions of years?
Yeah, millions of years. They're a fish that's millions of years old, and they haven't changed in that time. And for a long time, people thought they didn't. People thought they were just fossils. They don't live anymore. But no, they do. You can find them off Indonesia. You can find them off Africa.
Don't they live at like extreme depths though? Or
maybe I'm not 100% sure about that. Yeah, maybe I don't know how deep Lough gets. I really don't. So some people, the discovery that they still existed was still relatively recent at that time. So people were still excited about the idea that there could be fish that we thought were millions of years old but actually still exist. So people were onto that idea.
It wouldn't be too out of the realms of possibility, that one. Yeah.
Now, the story doesn't quite end in 1960. In 2001, and you can find there was genuinely RTE reports this at the time. You can still watch in RTE archives, and I think on YouTube as well. A team of investigators / monster hunters, it was three of them, one from Norway, one from Sweden, one from the USA. They went to Lough specifically to investigate the legend of the Lough monster. They had gone to other parts of the world to investigate similar things. They used a professional underwater listening device called a hydrophone. It detects underwater noises, sounds, that kind of thing. They did seemingly identify some noises that they identified noises that they couldn't identify. So they didn't come to anything conclusive. However, one of the team members, the idea that he came to was, have you ever heard of a lamprey or a lamprey, the type of fish?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're some people call them vampire fish.
Yeah, I was bitten by one of them when I was younger. Yeah.
Tell me about it. I didn't know that.
It was at Lough.
Yeah.
That was fishing. This was when I was very young.
Yeah.
And I was walking around and one of them latched onto my foot, and their mouths are like circular.
Yeah.
And like it's almost like saw blades.
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Yeah,
they're absolutely disgusting.
That's why I don't like swimming in lakes. Yeah. If the water's shallow and there's like weeds and stuff in the water, I don't want to go near it.
How big?
If the water has a bit depth to it, I wasn't that big. It was only maybe like that big or something.
Okay, so like 2-3 inches.
Yeah,
maybe,
I don't think they get that big.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
You're not aware of ones being like 6 feet, 7 feet long.
No. Maybe in prehistoric times.
Maybe, yeah. When
the Triassic.
When dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah.
So, and were you? It wasn't on land. Were you in? You were standing in water when this happened.
Yeah, maybe like shin deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't. That's never happened to me. I've never even. Yeah. Can you get leeches in the lakes in Ireland?
I don't think so. No, I don't know.
Do they look kind of like a leech? Do they?
Leech kind of looks more like a slug. A lamprey looks like an eel with like fucking a saw blade for a mouth.
How'd you get rid of it? How'd you get it off? What happened?
Dad pulled it off.
Yeah. Was it sore?
I think it was. I was like 10 or something, so I can't really remember a whole lot of it. It's just like anytime I see weeds in water, I'm just like, oh no.
No, that's totally fair. I feel the exact same that happened to me, but I've been blissfully unaware that can happen. It does happen. What did he do? Did he throw it back?
He threw it back in the water.
Yeah. Didn't cook it up. Or
well, you'd think he'd use it as bait or something.
Yeah. Or maybe other fish stay away from lamprey. I don't know. So the team was actually kind of going under the idea that it was a lamprey that was seen, however, an abnormally large lamprey, because in other parts of the world they had seen similar accounts like this, and they believed that could account for why some farmers were seeing their fish near lake shores that were sucked of blood, drained of blood. Now it'd have to be a very, very big lamprey, an irregularly large lamprey. But that is the conclusion that is the. Conclusion doesn't feel like the right word to use because it didn't prove anything. It's unproven, but that's their unproven conclusion that the 2001 team came to, that it was a giant lamprey. So take your pick with the 1961. Was it a prehistoric monster like a coelacanth, or I don't know how to say that? Was it a log floating in the water? Was it a family of otters swimming? Was it a pike stuck in a pike line? Was it a giant lamprey?
It's either the pike, the otters, or the lump of wood.
Yeah.
If there was to narrow it down more, it'd be the wood or the pike.
Yeah.
I'd probably go just an abnormally big pike.
And you wouldn't go for any kind of a supernatural or mythological creature like the Olifeist?
I'm a bit sceptical of those things now. Yeah. There's usually more of a logical explanation to those things, and I'd say it's pike. Like, they get huge, like they're really big, like.
Or maybe they made it all up, or maybe the three guys made the whole story up.
Maybe they were just locked.
Maybe they were locked. A lot of people have said that. Well, because I've talked about this, I've posted about this before in places, and a lot of people, for one thing, a lot of people just think it's hilarious that the story begins with 3 priests in a boat who wouldn't. But yeah, a lot of them make the thing like, oh, they were just drinking on the boat. And it was late in the evening. And another thing that kind of came to my mind, they definitely reported it was the 18th of May. Yeah. And they also definitely reported that it happened at about 9:30 at night. I can't personally remember myself that well, but it's not that bright at 9:30 at night on the 18th of May.
It's coming up to the solstice. So
solstice is just over a month away.
Yeah, so it'll be bright enough, I'd say.
We mustn't, on the next time the 18th of May or thereabouts coming, I'll put an alarm on my phone to see how. Well, you know what? Sorry, screw the idea. On the 18th of May, we're going to get on a boat on Lough and at around St. Mark's Wood near Glasson. I know a guy with a boat.
Yeah.
And we'll see how bright it was and see what the conditions were like at the time.
The 18th of May.
18th of May.
I'll be in Spain.
Well, I'll go.
Oh, you can go.
Miles can go too. So I mentioned the Olifeist there. So you already said that the word feist means paste. Pardon me, paste.
Paste.
Yeah, paste. Paste means. Well, I mean, we're most familiar with the word paste meaning worm, as in earthworm.
Yeah.
When we went to school, because there was a book whose name you might remember, I don't, but one of the characters was called Paul Paste. So Paul Worm.
Paul Worm. Yeah.
We had one or two guys in class called Paul. It's a little bit unfortunate called Paul or Paul, but Paul and Gaelic School, and they all go, Paul Page, like, or Anya Ossel, that kind of, Anya Ossel, that kind of
God, I remember that one, yeah.
Anya Ossel means Anne, donkey Anne, yeah.
Yeah, Anne Donkey, yeah.
It's an easy way for kids to remember animal names, but I guess for kids, but I don't know, then other kids just get sneered at that name.
Yeah.
Anyways, the reason I bring it up is because there is, not just around Lough, but around the country, there's very old accounts where they use the term paist or ollie paist. You've read The Hobbit, J.R. Tolkien, have you?
Yeah.
Did it ever seem odd to you in the book that when they're describing the dragon Smaug, or Smog, that every now and then they call it a worm?
That's WYRM.
Was it? I thought it was WORM, like a worm. Like they call it like a worm.
I do, because like in fantasy, a worm like WYRM is like a dragon that doesn't have front legs. It just has back legs and wings. So I don't know if Smaug was that kind of dragon.
You know what? I don't remember now, to be honest.
I can't remember in the book now what way they did spell it, but
let me just check real quick. I think Worm of Dread, I'm just looking up here. I haven't read that book in a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a good while. Good book, but it has been a while. But it might sound unusual that they're calling it a worm because it has wings. It's nothing at all like a worm.
Yeah.
Seemingly, in Old English and in Old Norse, the word that means worm today in English could also have been used to mean dragon or serpent. And similarly, in Irish, paist, that didn't just mean worm in the sense of earthworm. It meant serpent or kind of horrible thing, beast. Beast in a way you could say, but a beast with a certain body shape.
Yeah.
Dragon, we could even say in Ireland, not that it have flies and not that we quite have those types of legends. So, in a similar sense that the Lough monster was a kind of eel-shaped thing or a kind of snake-shaped thing, it was a paist in that kind of way, or at least you could look at it in that way. And certainly around Lough, that's how Saint Mokua, that sounds like Mokuba, like from
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, Mokua. I'm hoping it's Mokua. Yeah. I don't know what way it's said. Now, have you ever heard of the Black Pig's Dyke? This is related, I will say.
I haven't.
The Black Pig's Dyke is it's a genuine archaeological site. It is a series of earthworks that stretch most of the northern perimeter of the country. You can find the best examples around Scott's House in County Monaghan. No one's exactly 100% sure what it was for, or if it was one contiguously used thing.
Yeah.
But it would be, if you were to look at maps, you can actually follow the route of a lot of where the Black Pig's Dyke had been. It's an Iron Age thing, or even a Bronze Age thing. It's there a long time. And even to people centuries ago, or a couple of thousand years ago, they would have noticed that there was this big earthwork there, even though they might not know what it was anymore. And these days it gets called, most popularly, the Black Pig's Dyke.
Yeah.
Specifically because there's a folk tale relating to it that the Black Pig's Dyke was created by a giant boar with tusks.
Right.
and as it was angrily running down the country, it was creating the line into the earth with a tusk. That's why some people call it the Black Pig's Dyke. That's the most used term for it. However, apparently in some parts of the country, they call it the Worm's Dyke. Because there's another story of a paist, an ollie paist, a great worm, that is digging its way through the country like that and leaving a line like that. There's seemingly one old story of the hero Finn McCool, or in some cases St. Patrick banishing a sea creature, or banishing a lake creature rather, from Lough Derg in County Donegal, and as it's being banished from the country, because ollie paist and myth are absolutely gigantic, like size of counties nearly, it's drilling its whole way to the sea to get out of the country, and thereby accidentally makes the River Shannon.
All right.
And that's how they explain the River Shannon sometimes. It's
a bit of a long shot, that one, though.
I really reckon. Yeah. Well, how about this? Does this convince you more? Lough Derg, yeah. What is, could that mean Lough Jarrug?
Maybe, yeah.
Red Lake.
Yeah.
Well, could that not be the blood of the beast?
Maybe.
It's entirely possible. And a more modern day version is the one I was saying to you, Mucky in Muckross Lake, Killarney, County Kilkenny. That was, pardon me, I said 2001 earlier because I wasn't looking at my notes. It was actually 2003. I wasn't too far off. It was seemingly an underwater survey of the lake where they saw or detected some unusual presence down there. It could have been just sunken illegal dumping or just sunken trash or that kind of thing. They're not entirely fully
fly tipping.
Yeah, fly tipping. Yeah. But it did lead to another small search for mucky in that lake. I think there's some reports at the time in RT as well of people going down talking about it and looking for it. So we've talked about the Lough monster. We've talked about the ollie paist, so that there's older accounts of very similar things in Ireland.
Yeah.
The last term we're going to go into is the one I mentioned that apparently some people on the shores of Lough in the 70s referred to the Lough monster. It's called a horse eel. Horse eel, horsefish, horned eel. There's variations of it, but I'm going to use horse eel just to make it easy. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is, if you're to Google search horse eel or horsefish or horned eel, you're not going to find, at least last time I looked, a singular Wikipedia page that says what that term means and what it means in relation to what people talk about in Ireland. So when you see that, you're like, okay, there mustn't be, a whole lot of documentation on it out there. It must not be really a thing that people talked about. The more deeper you look, the more there is. You can actually look a lot into the RTE archives and a lot into older newspaper reports, especially throughout the 1950s and 60s in Ireland. And in particular, actually, in Connemara in County Galway. The following lakes, I found various accounts of sightings. Lough Auna, pardon me for my pronunciation for some of these, I've never been to any of these. Lough Auna, Lough Shannakeever, Black Lake, Ballynahinch Lake, Lough Mask, Lough Crowlon, Lough Derrylee, and Lough Plyblen. Plyblen? Plyblen? I don't know.
Lough Derrylee.
Derrylee, Derrylea.
I meant Derrylee.
No, Lunchables, Derrylee Lunchables. No. No, they weren't going to steal that IP. All right, one particular lake that wasn't mentioned on that list was Lough Fada, Fadda, in Connemara. Seemingly well known for its trout fishing and for its salmon fishing. Reports from there came out in the 1950s of a fisherman who was out fishing on Lough Fada when he heard like a big splash next to him in the water. When he went to look over his boat to see what it was, he saw a black eel or fish or something coming out of the water. Seemingly it had a big smooth sharky shaped head full of teeth. He escaped by rowing away on that occasion, but seemingly he didn't fish in that lake ever again.
All right.
There is one very interesting account on the exact same lake in 1965 where two women that described seeing in the lake a monster with the head shaped like a horse, they described it, the body like an eel, its mouth was like a shark, and its skin was a kind of bluey black colour. They said they saw two humps on its back as it was coming out of the water, and seemingly a forked tail at the end of it as well. So it sounds like they got a pretty good look at it. Once they saw it and they kind of startled it startled the fish too, and it just swam away. The interesting thing about this one in particular is there's actually a video of these two women you can get online of them describing what they saw. And it's just such a different experience where, like, reading about these is one thing, but when you actually see the people right in front of you giving their account, you're just like, I don't know, this just seems so much more real or something like that. They'd said, well, one of them said she'd seen seals before, she'd seen whales, she'd seen sharks. It didn't look anything like any of those things. Elsewhere in Connemara, there's a Lough Nahion.
I don't know.
Nahoon. I don't know. Nahoon. There's been two separate sightings of horse eel on that lake. One in 1948, one in 1968. The occasion in 1968 was a family saw a supposedly horsefish. They claimed it was about 4 meters long. I keep using feet in this so far, but 4 meters is... How big is 4 meters? Feet.
I don't know.
Me neither, yeah. Give a quick look there.
I don't have my driving license yet, so these distances are a bit lost on me.
I know, isn't it? Well, I don't know how tall I am in meters, to be honest. It's like 13 feet. That's gigantic. It's funny how 4 meters means absolutely nothing. That means nothing to me. But 13 feet. Like, Jesus, 13 feet. That's more than one of me on top of me. They claimed it was about 13 feet long. They also claimed it had dark coloured skin, that it snake shaped body. It was hairless. They claimed it was eyeless with the sharp mouth full of teeth. And they claimed with kind of two horns sticking out the top of it, or what might look like horns in some kind of a aquatic creature. They were, in this instance, found we were fishing at the shore of the lake. When they saw the thing coming towards them, they just got up and ran away quickly. And that's their kind of... It's interesting with the no eyes. Lampreys, I don't think they have eyes.
I don't know.
I don't think they have eyes. I don't think lampreys have eyes. And otherwise, a big mouthful of teeth. Did you actually see its mouth?
I can't really remember back at the time.
Yeah, it was that long ago.
Long time ago.
I believe they do. When you look up they're horrible looking things. When you see a tank full of them in video, they're awful. Jesus God.
It just looks like a circular saw or something.
Yeah, I mean, they're living their life the way they are, so it may leave them to do what
strange
they do.
Existence.
Peculiar existence, but I'm sure living as a human is just bizarre to them. They just couldn't imagine. They couldn't imagine it. They really couldn't. I don't think they could.
What are they like?
What are they like? One more account I'm going to bring up that's in the same vein. It's an older one. It's probably the most well-known one. It happened in the 1880s in Kilkee, County Clare. This one's different in that This isn't a lake, it's at the sea.
Yeah.
And it's also that long ago. There was a group of men and women walking by the cliffs, the Diamond Rocks they're called seemingly.
Yeah.
When they saw some kind of beast coming out of the water about 60 meters away from them, they didn't give an account of how big it was because how far away it was. But they did give the same description that other people give, that it had the body like an eel and the head like a horse.
Right.
Yeah.
Strange it happened twice.
I mean, more than twice. I'm abbreviating versions of these accounts I'm giving.
Yeah.
And I'm not even giving every account that I could find.
Yeah.
And when I initially went looking for these accounts, I actually stopped listing them because there was that many of them.
Yeah.
In particular, in the 1950s and in the 1960s, there was huge amounts of them, especially around Connemara, of this type of these accounts. I even found some. Funnily enough, it was a good while ago I started researching this, and I had so much written on it. I got to a point where I found a 1950s expedition in Connemara specifically looking for horsefish. And by this point, I was like, I started this by looking into horsefish, seeing there was no Wikipedia article, thinking, okay, well, that probably means there's not much written on them. Going deeper and finding so much stuff that I couldn't even take account of all of them. And then finding that there was expeditions in the 50s to look for these in Connemara. By that point, I was like, you could make a whole book. Well, guys did. Peter Costello did make a whole book about exactly this kind of thing in the 70s he did. I've not gotten a chance to get a hold of that book yet to give it a read, but it is something I definitely plan on doing. So what do you make of these accounts? What do you make of all of the different horse, eel, horsefish, paste, Lough monster accounts that have, in particular in the 20th century, been prominent in Ireland?
Yeah, again, I still think it's just like pike or something like that, or people are just drunk. Like especially back then, if they're drinking poaching or something, because apparently poaching, if you drink enough of it, you can hallucinate and stuff. So I don't know, maybe things like that. Or
funny note on that. Do you remember a while ago I told you a Will o' the Wisp story that my mum told me when I was a child, and I wasn't even really sure if that was a ghost story she had made up or somebody had told it, to her. And the story goes by a guy, he's out walking home from work or from somewhere, and because it's in the early 20th century, in the countryside in Ireland, there's no street lights, there's barely any lights at all. He gets lost in the darkness, he can't find his way back home, he sees a light, he follows the light to try and find where that is, but it keeps going further and further away, and he ends up just sleeping in the field and waking up the next morning. When I said that to her, she said that story comes from her granddad, so my great-granddad, who lived out in Dalystown, outside Mullingar, and her reckoning was immediately the same reckoning that you just had a minute ago there. Said he was probably, what was the word she used for drunk? He was probably, she probably just used the word drunk. She was probably, she was probably just locked and couldn't find his way out of a field.
Have you ever been there?
Not in a field. Like trying to find my way out of a field at night when locked.
Yeah.
No, I've tried to avoid that, to be honest.
I'd say you've been like that in a festival campsite now.
Yeah, but you don't need to be drunk to get lost.
Yeah, I suppose.
Now, here's one little interesting thing I want to add on as well. We did mention the Loch Ness Monster earlier on in this. And the Loch Ness Monster is, whenever someone mentions the word cryptid, the first two cryptids they will ever say, to give an example, is the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And which is weird because the Bigfoot is kind of all over North America / all over the world. Whereas the Loch Ness Monster is very specifically Loch Ness in Scotland.
Yeah.
But there has been a lot of publicity around that particular phenomenon over the years, and a lot of people doing not even like joke research, like genuine research into trying to find it. The thing is, though, that it was when these accounts were happening, it was a little bit of a sensation. It was particularly in 1933, and the very famous black and white blurry photograph of it where it looks kind of like a dinosaur coming out of the water, that's from 1934. Even after that particular 1934 photograph, all throughout the 1950s and up till 1960, there was reported sightings and other supposed photographs of the Loch Ness Monster. Do you think it's possible that there was a little bit of a sensation going on at the time, and this is being reported in papers or wherever, and people and just sort of got legs put on it? This is specifically the Loch Ness Monster that's getting loads of coverage in the 30s to the 60s.
Yeah, I'd say if there was reports of it coming out the whole time, then people probably either wanted to jump on the bandwagon saying they were also seeing stuff, or I don't know, they're just drunk and thought they were seeing things because they heard the story before and they were just like, oh no, there's another one.
Have you ever been drunk and saw a monster?
No.
Never?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
They got back in the 60s, like when they got locked.
Yeah.
Like, they must have just gotten real locked up.
Yeah. Aye. Especially if they're drinking like poaching and shine. Like, so.
Can that make you hallucinate?
I think if you drink too much poaching, you go blind. So it must do something to your vision. Like, so.
So basically, you're not sold on this. You're not sold on all these sightings.
It might be a bit of that. You know that phenomenon we talked about before called pareidolia, where people just see human objects in things. It might be the same thing. If there's stories going around about these monsters, they might have been thinking they've seen monsters in the waves when it's just their brain is just like making them think like that.
I mean, it's even similar to the 1985, the Summer of the Moving Marys.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've heard me talk about that before.
You lost.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. We'll do a podcast on that at some stage, but it's basically a phenomenon in 1985 in Ireland where one particular statue of the Virgin Mary was seen moving in Ballinspittle, County Cork. This led to a sensation all that summer where across the country, in Sligo, in Wicklow, I think in Kilkenny as well, where people saw other statues of Mary, which there are, if anyone's never been to Ireland, there is many statues of Mary in every town in Ireland. They were seen moving, and funnily enough, it was July of that year when the Ballinspittle one was reported moving. If you actually go into archives, the phenomenon actually began February of that year, and it began in Kerry. There was actually accounts and even news reportings at the time of children seeing statues move in Kerry. So I think maybe it could be a similar phenomenon where now we can't disprove that all these Mary statues weren't moving. But maybe it could be a similar phenomenon where, you know, there's a bit of excitement on it. And funnily enough, do you know who was totally against that moving statue sensation?
Who?
The Catholic Church.
All right.
Yeah. They were totally all the local parish priests and just in general had said it's just sensationalism, and you just don't want to get too caught up in this. Like that, they were not on for it at all.
They wouldn't be like.
No, but it didn't stop people going down and praying and everything like that, and just kind of going for them. My dad went to the 1985 one to go look at it because he was living in Cork at the time, so it was just down the road. Well, it was nearly an hour away. And in fairness, he said he saw it moving. But he said, we'll go into it in a podcast about the Summer of the Moving Mary statues, but he had an explanation as to why he thought he saw it moving, which is not a supernatural one. And there's actually many really interesting reasons out there why people say lots of people saw that particular statue moving that are not supernatural explanations, because overwhelmingly people that went to go see it did see it move. Even people who didn't think it was anything supernatural, they said they could see it move as well.
So not just like a statue sliding down a mucky hill in the rain or something.
It is on a hill. It is on a hill. The Ballinspittle Mary is on a hill. It's kind of in a funny place. It's not quite in the village, but it is on a small slope. So to look at it, you have to look upwards at it at an angle. There is some talk about how looking up at it at an angle, how that can distort your perception on it. But there's also the sensationalism surrounding it. Or it could be lots of statues moving, and we're just talking it down.
There's naysayers.
Naysayers, yeah. Is that us?
It might be. Well, it'd be me anyway.
I'm
skeptical of these things, very much so.
Right, and that's our tale of the Lough monster for now. Stay tuned until the 18th of May, and let's see if we can find them. And as far as I'm aware, that £100 reward was never revoked. Yeah, so
it's incentive.
We might get £100 out of it. £100
punt.
£100 punt. Yeah, have to go to the bank in Dublin to turn it into euro. The central bank. All right, so Shameen, what do you have there?
Right. So who was the most famous man of the 30s and 40s? He caused a lot of trouble.
Do I want to use the word famous or infamous?
Infamous.
Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler, right. He had two Irish relatives. I don't know if you ever heard about this before. One
thing I heard really recently, was that he visited Liverpool one time in the 1930s. This is in here, yeah?
It's...
a little bit.
He might have visited. He might have, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to there. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I know. I've heard. Yeah,
we'll get to that. Right. I'll mostly tell you about William Patrick Hitler, his nephew, and then his sister-in-law Bridget Dowling. She was from
Adolf
Dublin.
Hitler's sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law.
How many siblings does he have? Anyways, do we know?
Adolf Hitler. He had There's one I'm going to talk about here called
Yeah.
Alois Hitler. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's Alois. That was his half brother, and he's the one who married the Irish woman.
Yeah, because he had half siblings. Yeah.
He had a couple of half siblings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so basically, William Patrick Hitler, or Paddy Hitler, as what I found they call him online, is later called William Patrick Stuart Houston. He changed his name for obvious reasons. So he was born 12th of March 1911, died 14th of July 1987. Now, his mother was Irish. She was born and raised in Liverpool. And to give some context to the Irish part of it, Bridget Dowling, which was Adolf Hitler's sister-in-law.
So Alois is the dad.
Is Adolf Hitler's brother. And
Half-brother.
Half-brother and father of Paddy Hitler.
Okay, and the mother is
Bridget Dowling.
Bridget Dowling.
Which became Bridget Hitler.
Okay.
It's weird, isn't it?
I know, yeah. That's pretty funny.
But, so Bridget Dowling, she was born and raised in Dublin. She met Alois Hitler in 1909 at the Dublin Horse Show. Alois claimed to be a wealthy hotelier that was touring Europe. He was actually just a kitchen porter in the Shelburne Hotel in Dublin. He was a bit of a smooth talker, so he was able to lie. Eventually he was found out, and her family didn't like it, but he managed to swindle the family into it. So being a prick just ran in the family.
Well, it was probably, I don't know, like, because he had the Austrian accent, he could pretend he was like a maitre d' or something like that.
I think that was part
dishwasher.
of it. Yeah. So eventually the two of them eloped to London, where she married him and became Bridget Hitler. Then they moved to Liverpool, 1911, and that's where William Patrick Hitler was born.
The one kid, is it?
It was just the one kid that they had. Then she'd also claimed that Hitler lived with them between 1912 and 1913 to avoid conscription. But Adolf Hitler. But that's not confirmed at all.
He did fight though. He
did fight in the war. I think that's where a lot of the bitterness might have come from.
Oh, right.
And she also had written a manuscript at some point called My Brother-in-Law Adolf. I think it was like denouncing him. Then the whole Bridget Dowling and her family remained a mystery as well until an Irish census from 1901 and 1911 that was digitised, and that's when it was kind of confirmed that she actually was Irish. I'm not sure what year that was.
The thing is, those census records only come out 100 years later.
Right. Okay,
so that would have been only in this millennium, in this century, that we would have you would have been able to get access to all those records. At least these are Irish records you're talking about, or ones in the UK.
It was the Irish census.
Okay, it was the Irish census. Yeah. So that those only come out every the 100 years ones only come out 100 years later.
Yeah. And then just a little bit of background on Alois Hitler, Hitler's half brother, the same dad. So he was Adolf's brother. The two of them never got along. He wasn't even mentioned in Mein Kampf.
What, does he talk about his family in that?
Yeah, but he doesn't mention him. No,
I don't know what's in that book.
I haven't read it. I don't think I will. But yeah, he doesn't mention him. He was in prison a few times for theft, and he eventually immigrated to London. Then he was in Ireland for a while, obviously working in the hotel. That's where he met Bridget. And eventually, or actually, we'll come back to that. We'll just go into Paddy Hitler now. So he was mostly brought up by his mother, and it was written. His father had written to him in about 1920 to come to Germany's Weimar Republic. And then when he was about 18, he did go over, and there is so much records about what he did on that particular visit.
So he's 18. He's born in 1911. Was that it?
Yeah.
So in like 1929, he went over.
Yeah. So he went over at some point. He had an apprenticeship. He went over to visit his dad, and there is so much records about what happened during that visit. Then he came back to London anyway, and he became an accountant. Then when Hitler rose to power, he got sacked because of the family name.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. It's when Hitler was going a bit mad. So then at that point, Adolf was now Chancellor. So Paddy decided to go over to Germany to take advantage of his uncle's newfound power. And he got him a job in a bank, and then eventually in an Opel automobile factory as a salesman.
Right.
So he was pretty dissatisfied with these jobs, so started making threats to Adolf, saying he was going to out him, that he had a Jewish grandfather. It's not confirmed.
That's not I have seen video essays on that. That is a popular hypothesis or that, but that's not confirmed, I don't believe. Yeah, that's not confirmed anyway. I'm kind of flying through this, to be honest. No worries.
So he tried to blackmail him, And then Hitler described him as his loathsome Irish nephew, as he was boastful, talkative, and found him really bothersome.
We need to use the word bothersome more. It's a good one.
Then he also started copying Uncle Adolf's mannerisms by doing like the arm crossing thing, and even grew a similar mustache as well. Yeah.
Relatively. I mean, I've never seen anyone else with that mustache bar. Charlie Chaplin and Adolf Hitler, but seemingly it was popular at the time. Not that I ever saw anyone else with it.
I'd say it was popular because of Charlie Chaplin. Wasn't that why Hitler had it? Because he was fond of him? Or?
If you see, there is pictures of Adolf Hitler in the First World War. He had a big, he had a really big kind of like Prussian mustache at the time.
Yeah. Hitler's dad also had one of those big Prussian mustaches.
It was the style at the time.
Yeah, I was looking at some family pictures the other day. Hitler did say he'd get him a bigger job within the government, but he had to relinquish his British citizenship in exchange for a high-ranking job. So he thought that was a trap and fled back to England. And then he wrote some kind of manuscript, and he was there called "Why I Hate My Uncle." In about 1939, he travelled to US for a lecture tour, and he used his colourful background to get attention, criticising Adolf and the Nazi Party, saying they're all sexual perverts. And the lecture tour was called "What the German People Are Thinking," and there was a sub one called "The Truth About Hitler and His Regime" from someone who knows them inside and out. So I think he was just touring around, just like giving out about Hitler and
just getting money for talks or whatever.
Pretty much, like yeah. I'm surprised he wasn't like arrested and stuff like that.
1930. America's not in the war for a while. There was. I don't know when exactly they were outlawed, but there was a sort of like a version of. It wasn't the Nazi Party, but it was like it wasn't Hitler Youth either, but it was like the American German Friendship Organization or something like that. I'll find the name in a moment. There actually was some. They filmed Madison Square Gardens on one occasion in 1939. I think there was some support amongst German Americans for that.
Once the war broke out properly, the two of them, him and his mother, were stranded in America, and he made a special request to Roosevelt to join the US Navy as a pharmacist, which he managed to do. He was only in it for a year. About 3 years actually. He was discharged in 1947.
All right.
An honourable discharge as well. When he was being discharged, he also said to whoever the guy was who was discharging him, he asked him, what's your name? And he said Hitler. And he was just like, oh yes, my name's Hess. Something like that. Yeah. Now, during a lot of his life as well here, as I was describing, he was back and forth between Ireland visiting relatives as well. So he was around like...
Where's his mother from, do you know? Dublin. So he visited Dublin.
Yeah. Then after the war ended, he wanted to live a bit more of a reclusive life, so changed his name to Stuart Houston, and he lived a life of anonymity with his mother and his wife, and he had 4 sons. And then the interesting thing about the 4 sons is that they made a pact with each other to never have kids, to end the Hitler line and kill the gene off. And that's kind of all the notes I have on that anyway. I just found it interesting that he had some Irish relatives. So
what bits are definitely true about that story? So let's start at the beginning. Adolf Hitler definitely has a half-brother, Alois Hitler.
Yeah.
Alois Hitler definitely married Bridget Dowling.
Yeah.
Who became Bridget Hitler.
Yeah.
They married in Liverpool. Pardon me, they married in London.
Moved to Liverpool.
When did Alois leave? Because it sounds like he left his life. He left...
I should have explained that. So there's a few different stories about that. So around 1914 or 15, he moved back to either Germany or Austria, which are not really too separate from each other.
They were two...
no, they were, yeah.
There were two countries then, yeah. There were 2 countries then, yeah.
Now... he did remarry when he was over there about 1913. Some say he didn't go back to England because of the war, and other sources say that he went on a gambling tour of Europe. He was an alcoholic, and he did beat Bridget and Paddy. So I'd say it was something to do with that, or maybe a mix of all of it, really. But thing with Alois as well, he wasn't part of a member of the Nazi Party. His son was.
Paddy or?
No, his other son.
His other son.
He had another son who was he was actually captured by the Soviets and died in captivity.
Oh, yikes.
And Alois, he wasn't part. He was arrested by the British after the war, but they kind of were happy that he wasn't a part of it somehow.
When did he die? When does he leave the story?
1956 he died.
Okay. And did the two of them, when Paddy moved to Germany, did they to meet, or is there much known about that?
There isn't a whole lot about it, but apparently they never really got along. Like when Paddy did go back to Germany, he was mostly trying to get in with Hitler. Just to
the brothers didn't like each other anyway, so it wouldn't have been.
They didn't like each other, and then like obviously Hitler and Paddy didn't get along either. Hitler thought he was some kind of chancer.
Yeah, but sounds a bit like it. Yeah. He one thing I'm curious about. I don't know if the answer is out there, but does he speak German?
Yeah, because there's videos of him online doing some of those only like small sound bites. He does he sounds a little bit English and quite a bit German.
Really?
I found, yeah.
Okay, so he does, because I was wondering otherwise, how does he go to Germany and get positions and that? Yeah.
There's actually a documentary on this that I only found before, like half an hour before I came down to you.
Yeah.
It's called The Pact, and I think it's about Paddy's 4 sons and the pact they made not to have kids. But I haven't watched it. So.
Many years ago, 15 years ago maybe, on Discovery Channel there was a documentary. I don't know if it is that one. That talked about family of and relatives of and descendants of Adolf Hitler and what their life is like decades later. And I did hear, because I didn't, my sister watched it. I actually didn't watch it, but she did say that there was some of them. I think pretty much all of them just changed their names. But there were certain ones. It probably must have been his kids that had decided not to have kids or something like that. Yeah. Well, I think that's a fascinating one. And so another one that's not confirmed, the one I mentioned, is that Adolf Hitler went to Liverpool at one point.
Yeah, that's not confirmed. Like Bridget says that he had visited, but there's no records of it or anything. It's just her word.
Right.
But that was like pretty much at the start. Like, what year was it? 1914. 1915. So at what point in the war would that have been?
Start of 1914.
Start of the war. Yeah.
September. I think World War II, September.
Because it said he went there to avoid conscription, but like he did fight in the war.
He did fight in the war. Yeah.
There's some of the information on it, whether like Aloysius went back to Germany or Austria. It's not really said actually where he went. Probably Germany, in fairness.
Yeah.
Then the why he didn't go back to Liverpool as well to them was either because he went on a gambling tour or because of the war. I'd say probably because maybe both. Maybe he went gambling and then it was like, oh no. Right.
I have a funny story. Just last October, I was a friend of mine from Austria. We went travelling a bit in Ireland and we were on Inish Moor, and I don't know, we're just chatting shite and I don't know. I asked her, what are your grandparents' names?
Yeah.
And her granddad's name is Adolf.
Right.
And she said he was born in 1943. So during the Second World War, before the death of Hitler,
right.
the deposition of the Nazi regime, popular name at the time. And I said, I don't know if you could do that anymore. And she said, no, it's illegal. It's illegal in Austria to call a child Adolf. He's like one of the last ones.
But anyway, I know this is kind of loosely related to Ireland. I just thought the names Paddy and Bridget Hitler were kind of funny.
They're amusing. No, it's more than related. There's another interesting thing related to that. There was do you know about the German spy Hermann Gurtz? I don't know if I'm saying that right. He's
I know the name. Yeah.
He was a German spy who parachuted into Ireland. He actually parachuted into I think I mentioned this in the Place Names episode actually. In what's the town called? It's in County Meath. Ballivor. Yeah, he parachuted into near Ballivor, and at the time, it was in 1941 after the fall of France, and they weren't 100. Like there was plans that on the in folder somewhere about an invasion of Britain or an invasion of Ireland to invade Britain or this kind of thing. Yeah. So for over a year, Hermann Gurtz was actually in liaison with the IRA at the time, and he was kept in hiding with them for over a year. He was brought to different safe houses around Dublin, all around the country. Eventually, I think in 1943, he was found. The Gardaí Síochána found him in a safe house in Dublin, and he spent the rest of the war in internment. And he actually died in 1947. He killed himself because he was going to get sent back to Germany, but he was going to get sent to East Germany. So he killed himself rather than be sent back to East Germany. His grave is in Ireland. His grave is in County Wicklow in the German, the one I mentioned a lot. The German.
I think you did tell me about. This before,
the German War Cemetery. His grave's there. That's still that graveyard is still managed by the German War Graveyards Commission, something like that. So I really want to see it sometime. Just a bizarre thing. I mean, I think all the graves are in German as well. But I remember telling my mum that story about this German spy that parachuted into Ballivor, and how like a year and a bit later he got found by the Gardaí in a safe house in Dublin. And my mum's hypothesis, without knowing any other background on it, as to what happened was that the IRA got sick of putting them up, and they gave him up so that they could get someone else important in the IRA out of jail.
Oh, right, yeah.
That is completely conjecture on her part.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it doesn't sound impossible either. Like,
no, it doesn't.
And by that point in 1943...
were the Ra not in cahoots a bit with Nazi Germany?
They were a little bit. That's why they were hiding him. But by 1943... the invasion of Britain or the invasion of Ireland's not going to happen because they're already Germany's engaged in the Soviet Union, so that plan's pretty much off the table altogether. So you probably kind of useless to them at that point. There is another German commando who actually lived in Ireland in the 1960s. He is I'm getting his name now, but he this particular guy I'm just getting is Otto Skorzeny. He only died in 1975. In his pictures, he's most distinctive. He's got what looks like a Glasgow smile up the side of his head. He's got a huge scar on the side of his head. He is one of his most well-known things is that in 1943, when fascist Italy, when Mussolini's Italy, when the king of Italy at the time. People forget that Mussolini was in charge, but there was always a king, and the king could always fire him whenever he wanted to. The king fired him. He was arrested. Italy surrendered to the Allies. However, Mussolini was put into an Alpine hotel as a prison. He was busted out by German commandos led by Otto Skorzeny. He was flown to Austria to the Wolf's Den, I think, maybe not the Wolf's Den, to meet with Hitler, and he was put back in charge of a puppet fascist state in the north of Italy for the duration of the war, up until he was killed a few days before Hitler was killed. Otto Skorzeny, that's his most well-known operation, but he was also involved in the Battle of the Bulge as well. He was arrested after the war. He was interned in prison in a POW camp in Germany. He was busted out by loyalists of him. He escaped for the rest of his life and lived in Madrid, lived in Argentina, lived in Egypt. And seemingly, for points of time, lived in Ireland. He had a house. Let me find it where. Apparently, he didn't spend that much time there, but he lived in Ireland sometimes.
A nice house in Carrick, Shannon.
Where is it? Yeah, where's Oscar Zenny's house? He seemingly he bought a farm near the Curragh in County Kildare, of all places.
All right.
Now he didn't.
Bit espionage.
Yeah, it could have been something. I don't know. Yeah, no, he died. He died in Madrid of lung cancer of natural causes. He never came to came to justice. He was never trialed or anything like that. But that's another just a much smaller link. But still, he owned a farm in Kildare. I don't know.
There's that other one. I think. Remember, we were trying to record that Gael Skull podcast. We haven't put it out yet. Someone messaged you about the Folan's Book Company, and it was apparently started by an SS officer who escaped Nazi Germany. I haven't looked into that.
One guy DM'd me that. I know nothing else beyond what he DM'd me. And I thought it sounded kind of interesting, but I never looked into it since. But they would have made all the... Did Folan's make all the rest of it?
Blood, Paul Pish and Yassel and all that.
Paul Pish and Yassel and all that,
Would have been all that.
It was so funny that really recently I heard the Irish connection with Hitler's relatives. I never knew anything about it. I never, except for what was vaguely said to me in a pub like a week or two ago.
It's loose enough. Like, I mean, it's Hitler's half-brother and then married a woman who had...
married an Irish woman. His man was Irish, absolutely.
There's Irish blood in there anyway. But he didn't seem to be too bothered with Hitler after he started calling him a chancer and all sorts.
Yeah, didn't seem too bothered with Ireland either, by the sounds of it. Yeah.
But I must watch that. It's on Netflix anyway, called The Pact.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Might watch it now.
Yeah.
Well, look, we've had a great conversation about sea monsters and lake monsters, ancient old Irish folklore, and the unusual connection between between Adolf Hitler and Ireland. So I think we'll leave it there, but it's been great chatting to you, Shameen.
Yeah.
And we must do this again sometime.
We'll do it again soon.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Shameen, for being on this podcast. Well, thanks, anyways, Shameen. I want to thank you for listening. Thanks for listening, and see you somewhere else in the Weird Ireland podcast.